Good morning, America. I'm going to have to get this out of the way. In 2019, you thought that we were nincompoops because we were supporting some guy named Tim Scott. Why were we not voting for Donald Trump? Everybody that's a Christian is supposed to vote for Donald Trump because you might let the other guy win. He won. But it's okay because we, Jason and I, on this show, endorsed. Wait. Oh, yeah, don't be trying to take my stream out now. The Democrats, don't try to take my... Russians, don't try to take my stream out. Chinese, don't try to take my stream out. Y'all know what's up. Timothy Eugene Scott. And if you're watching, thank you for the email that you sent to me. Timothy Eugene Scott was born on September 19, 1965, in the heart of civil rights, by the way. North Charleston, South Carolina. U.S. American politician who was appointed to the Republican Senate from South Carolina in 2013, where he won a special election the following year and was the first African American elected to the Senate since the time of Reconstruction. We got historical precedents going on here. He previously served in the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2013. He attended Presbyterian College on a football scholarship. He knows how to play that pigskin. Before transferring to South Charleston Southern University, no disrespect to your university. I love that university, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1988, political science, and then he worked in real estate. And by the 1990s, he owned his own business. He was making his own bread, and he's teaching other people how to make their own bread too. This man is phenomenal. He's just a man. I understand. There's no worship going on here this morning. He's just a man. We have endorsed him for president of the United States, and his announcement as president of the United States. I don't know what's going on with the video this morning, but that's okay because I'm in a random hotel in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It is the Way Forward Show. Get up on this thing.
Government officials insist that
Good morning, Jason.
Good morning.
Worst intro ever.
They're trying to shut you down, bro.
You know, the Democrats have all sorts of tricky schemes.
This ain't the Democrats. It's the Trumpeteers, bro. They're coming after you.
Oh, yeah, this is true.
You got a contender. You got a guy.
Okay, this is true. This is true. We got to watch out. Hey, the Trumpettes are out there now.
That's it. I remember us talking about Tim Scott several years ago, and I think you sent me like a text. Hey, have you read anything on Tim Scott or this or that? And like, no, I haven't. So then did a little research, and I remember looking up his page and starting to read his stances and thinking, man, this guy's writing pretty much right out of my thought base. And what I loved is he posted publicly like where he attended church and his faith commitments. And
oh yeah,
like, all right,
he wrote a statement of faith.
All right, I like this guy. And I sent a picture of me voting for Tim Scott to some friends and family to show that I believe that voting on a man's integrity and characters are more important than popularity. And I still have that picture. And I wanted to send it to him and tell him, look, when everybody else was going one way, we think we found a man. So I'm excited about him. I'm really excited about him. I like him a lot. And I don't get behind political candidates very often because I think they're all whack, conservatives and liberals.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question about that really quickly since you're a pastor. But since you are a pastor, can you lead us in prayer this morning before we jump into this? I don't think this should be controversial, but, you know, there may be some people who are just like, nah, we don't like Tim Scott.
All right, Pastor Erskin. I will.
All right.
We'll do it too. Just reminding you that you got company, bro.
I did not know that. Let me let me blur the screen here.
All right. Good. But while you're working on that, I'm gonna pray for us.
All right.
All right. Good thing. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for just this beautiful morning, this grace you've given us to get up, and the mercies are new. Help us, Lord, to seek first your kingdom and its righteousness, knowing that all things are worked out for us, Lord, and we can trust in you with all of our heart, lean not in understanding, and always acknowledge you, knowing you'll straighten our path. Father, that we love you, love our mind, heart, soul, and strength. We can love our neighbors as ourselves when we love you like that. And so, Father, I just pray right now the discussion will be wise and edifying and helping the
Yes.
church. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right.
All right. Praise the Lord.
I thought you had Justin, but that's not Justin. That's not Justin.
That's not Justin.
Unless you adopted a white guy for a son, which would be awesome, by the way. But,
You wild, man. You wild. Let me get these tags out of the way. We go ahead and get started this morning. Hey, on the various platforms that you guys are watching, since we'll be using some source material, the Copyright Act Section 107 of 1976 allows the clause of fair use for criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. All right. So that is out of the way, my friend. Let's jump into just a little bit of the historical note. If you remember back to the last election, I had several discussions with people who were saying to not vote for Donald Trump means that you were voting for the other guy. And I said, no. That is a fallacy. By not voting for Donald Trump, I'm doing what most pastors and people will say is what we should be doing, is voting our convictions. As a believer, my convictions should line up with scripture. So if there's a candidate that fits that description, even one who at the time wasn't running for president, I specifically wrote to Tim Scott's campaign and said, hey, I am just offering this as a suggestion, trying to gain some grassroots support for you as a presidential candidate in 24. They put me on their mailing list, and I've been receiving information from them since 2020. Now, this announcement that he's running for president of the United States can only mean that there were perhaps others who took the approach of a grassroots mentality and said, you ought to really think about running for president of the United States because you embody the values and the ideology that I believe that someone in that high office and dignity should possess. And so, because not just me, I don't want to take the credit, not just Jason, we don't want to take the credit for it, but perhaps there were others who did the exact same thing. And now it leads us to this point. And I can only say I saw that coming.
Oh, that's so kind. You got so much godliness right now. It's so good.
Excuse me. We got to see how this goes.
Yeah.
We got to see how this goes.
I remember having that in the conversation, and that's what's great about doing this show is that we can go back and look.
We can go back and check the tapes
and say,
we were nincompoops in 2019.
And we received a little bit of pushback just about not getting on board with the evangelical train on this election. And I think we're going to receive more pushback because they're not going to take too kindly to this either. But I feel like we have an opportunity here. And if we will listen to what this man has to say and begin to pray, this could be a kind of interesting crossroads for at least the evangelical church. Now, for America, I don't know, because I feel like right now the political landscape in America is an interesting duck. And it might be worth mentioning this for a second because this will affect whoever runs. But if you were to look at the political landscape, of course, you have the left and you have the very progressive left, and then you have a group of people in there who are probably a little more moderate. They're probably conservative on some of their value systems, but they're more liberal on their government policies. I think Piers Morgan probably fits inside of that group. You know, have you ever listened to Piers Morgan? He is not really buying into the kind of the woke agenda, but he's definitely still liberal. Douglas, Murray, who wrote The Madness of Crowds, still fits inside the liberal camp, but he's not all the way over to the far left, right? But that's pretty much your left-hand side over there, okay?
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, though, you have, I think, a little more of a variety of conservatives, and they're not all firing on the same pistons. You have the evangelicals, but they're not really. That's one particular group. You have this evangelical Christianity, but then you also have like the church, because not everybody inside the evangelical camp is necessarily the church. And I think you're making. We're going to make more distinctions here in the next few years about what the church actually looks like versus evangelical Christianity. So you've got two there. Then you've got more of your conservative constitutionalist type folks, like your Joe Rogans, your Tom McDonald's, those kind of people, who are conservative politically, but morally they're really no different than, say, the liberal base. And so you have those folks, and then you have just the religious in general, your conservative Jews and Muslims and all those folks. So you've got like 4 or 5 divides inside the conservative camp. And Tim Scott is going to have to appeal to all of them to get elected, right? I mean, because Trump did appeal to all of them. He just by his vulgarity appealed to the constitutional, like, I'm going to stick it to China, I'm pro-America and all that. And then he was able to kind of swing over, but I love Jesus too, kind of. You know?
Hey, Tim Scott, in your campaign, if you're watching this, we're giving you a blueprint for how you can run for a legitimate run for president.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
Jason is giving you expert analysis of all the different divides that are there. I'm sure your camp knows this, but if you need us for any type of campaign advice, hey, before you continue, let me ask you the question. You are a pastor. Maybe we're just having a discussion about political candidates, because from what I understand, as a 501c3, you cannot come out and endorse a candidate.
Not
correct.
Not from a pulpit. I can't.
Okay.
I can have a personal opinion, but I can't tell my church, hey, you need to go from the pulpit. You have to go vote for Tim Scott, or we're going to set up signs in the yard, vote for Tim Scott, or something like that. But I can have a personal opinion. I can state that opinion publicly. I can even encourage friends and family and even parishioners to do it, just not using funds in my platform in the church pulpit, or I should say the church institution. I cannot use that as a means to further a candidate's political party.
Okay. Yep. Just want to clarify that before we begin. You want to watch this video?
I do. Okay.
Yeah. We'll make a couple of comments throughout the course of it, just to make sure that it fits within the guise of fair use.
April 12th, 1861, in this harbor, the first shots of the Civil War were fired, and our country faced the defining moment. Would we truly be one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all? America's soul was put to the test, and we prevailed. Today, our country is once again being tested. Once again, our divisions run deep, and the threat to our future is real. Joe Biden and the radical left have chosen a culture of grievance over greatness. They're promoting victimhood instead of personal responsibility.
There's your guy.
Yeah.
There's your guy. He's, and I haven't paid attention, but he is still alive, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Bernie's still kicking.
Okay.
And still endorsing.
No disrespect intended. I just haven't paid attention. Like I know he was a little older the last time when he ran, and here we are.
And they're indoctrinating our children to believe we live in an evil country. And all too often, when they get called out for their failures, they weaponize race to divide us.
Shots fired. We still firing some shots from South Carolina.
Yeah.
We have to get to some of these talking points, but
to hold on to their power. When I fought back against their liberal agenda, they called me a prop, a token, because I disrupt their narrative. I threaten their control. They know the truth of my life disproves their lies.
Let's get into
like
this.
A testimony, right?
Yeah, let's just unpack a few of the things that he has been talking about here.
Well, look at the setting. Where is he talking from? It's the first shot of the Civil War. I mean, he is making a statement right now. Like he is coming full blown that the kind of strife and tension that the country faced in 1860 to 1863, 1861, 1863 is the same, if not deeper tension than we have right now. And
Brilliant.
you want to talk about using a platform of race. I mean, he's doing it. Like he's starting off right with the Civil War conflict. And I love how he said American soul was tested and we prevailed. I just think this is great language. He's grabbing the hearts of people.
I love that. And I love the fact that let's not hide behind murky shadows of supposed things that the Democratic Party may be mentioning or people who are progressive may be talking about. He put their picture up there. I love it.
He called them out by name.
In case you don't know who I'm talking about, I'm talking about you and you.
I love how his alliteration, right? He's using these. They're choosing a politics of grievance. I mean, just explore that for a minute. Yeah, everything is victimhood. Everything is your fault, and we're all bad, and we're all just with all these problems. And he's saying, look, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's more to this country than just our grievances. Excuse me. That there's the country has sins. Nobody denies that. And if you go to his page, he actually talks about social justice reform and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He's not turning a blind eye to the nonsense inside of our country. He's just saying, look, we've got to have a different perspective on how we find solutions for this thing. And just sitting there talking about how bad we are and our grievances ain't going to cut it. I was like, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of his background and story because the first thing that people would want to do to invalidate him as a candidate is to say, well, he was raised with a silver spoon in his mouth, or he had advantages, or he was able to circumvent the normal system in the United States and became a prop for white America.
Token is what he called
a token for white America.
I hate that label.
Yeah, he's the token black guy. Now, I will say this on the other side. Let me be clear about this. There were many people who rightly brought up the fact that under the Trump administration, there had been more advances for African Americans, brown, black, and Latino Americans in America during his administration than for the past 30 years for advancements, opportunities, relief of taxes, initiatives that the government was involved in. And they rightly pointed to those things, but many people don't know this because I started doing a little deep dive on that. Who's positioning these initiatives? Who's championing these causes? Who is at the forefront of leading these things? And the reason why I endorsed Tim Scott in 2019 is because when I did a deep dive on that, I started finding Tim Scott's name involved with these initiatives.
A lot of initiatives, yes.
Opportunity zones. And I started thinking, well, why isn't all of America talking about this? If we're going to racially divide ourselves because of the lack of opportunities and because of the systemic injustice, then there ought to be somebody that's speaking to the issue of how to bridge the gap between the two of those things and how there are now more opportunities. And a lot of that was attributed to Tim Scott. Now, he didn't take the podium because Donald Trump sucks up all the air in the room, but oftentimes he was in the background. And I'm like, I figured out who it is that's doing all of this for the advancement of black and brown people in America and minorities in America. It seems to be Tim Scott. And so I was pleased to see him come more to the forefront because I think he is going to talk more about the opportunity zones and viable economic and political and racial solutions that our country desperately needs.
Listen to his story. This dude is the epitome of opportunity in America. Talk about the American dream. He is the poster child for how somebody can come from absolutely nothing and achieve great things in a country that allows the freedom to do so, even with all the nonsense some of our country has. and he was born in 1965, so he was born in some nonsense, right?
Mm.
But there's something about him and his family, and I know he's going to talk about this too, in his relationship with the Lord, that just moved him in a position to do what he's doing. So you got to hear.
See, I was raised by a single mother in poverty. The spoons in our apartment were plastic, not silver. But we had faith. We put in the work, and we had an unwavering belief that we too could live the American dream. I know America is a land of opportunity, not a land of oppression. I know it because I've lived it. That's why it pains my soul to see the Biden liberals attacking every rung of the ladder that helped me climb.
Listen to that. Listen to that for a second. That is so.
This is very well written, by the way.
That is profound. He's sitting there saying, we had faith, we put in the work, and the Bidens and the liberals are tearing down every rung of the ladder I used to get up. I thought, good grief. Right? If that's not a statement, I mean, you're looking at it, say a young African-American boy in the ghetto, and you're trying to tell him, hey, look, there is a better life. There is a better life. And the liberals are saying, we know the way. We're just going to tear the steps out from you to get to it. And he's like, hell no. Hell no. I loved it. That was one of my favorite parts. I was listening to it. I was like, yes, man, that's the truth. That is the truth.
The comment section is turned on. Y'all quiet today. Comment section is turned on, but I think many people are quiet today because they're watching this and they're going, I had no idea. I had no idea back in 2019 that you guys were even talking like this. I had no idea that this guy was actually around. I had no idea who was behind all, or a lot of, I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of the Trump gains that were made for minorities in America. I had no idea this man was a man of faith. And he goes into that in this, sharing his story of faith and the fact that that rung of the ladder, my friend, is also torn down by progressives as being something that is unimportant.
Yes.
Let me just go on record and saying that's the most important rung of the ladder. That's the reason why we are doing the way forward, so that the church can grasp the gravity and the beauty of being placed in an age, in a generation in which we have opportunity to present the gospel in so many facets of life. The seams of America have opened up and the cracks are now there so that we can see gospel in broken homes, gospel among families, gospel in the transgender community with all the confusion and depression that's going there, gospel to the gays, gospel to the lesbians, gospel to those who are hurting in our society, gospel to the poor, gospel to the rich, the cracks, gospel to the politicians that are out there. The cracks, the fissures are wide, and it's a brilliant opportunity for those who believe in the power of the gospel, coming right off of Easter, to present that glorious message. Come on, Tim Scott.
If luck gets their way, millions more families will be trapped in failing schools, crime-ridden neighborhoods, and crushing inflation. Not on my watch. This is personal to me. I will never back down in defense of the conservative values that make America exceptional. And that's why I'm announcing my exploratory committee for president of the United States.
Hey, America's not great. America's exceptional.
Exceptional.
He avoided that. I like it. America's not just great. America's exceptional. I like it.
You know what, DT? That was a good start, but we'll raise the stakes a little bit. Exceptional America.
Exceptional. I like it. I love his, and there's a certain degree of his masculinity too. I like. Not on my watch.
Yeah. We gotta talk about that with the Dolphins.
You got a strong man in front of you he's not vulgar. His Twitter account's not going to cause a nuclear war. He's using some reason, and he's still passionate. And on top of it, I know it shouldn't matter, but it does matter. You have a black man standing up saying, look, we can do better. We can do better.
I mean, let's just keep it a buck. I'm just going to say one of the reasons, and I know people are watching this, they're like, Erskine, we know when you get that little smug look on your face, you're just sitting back there just brimming with how you would speak to the African-American community with all the Raphael Warnocks and folks that are
I
out there who
know.
are these black liberals who do not represent health and strength in our country, but they represent degradation. I know I called out them by name, so if you feel like you need to come on this show and you need to defend yourself,
Please come on our show. We'd
please
love to
come on our
have
show
you.
because you will not be able to defend your horrific policies in the state of Georgia. But I digress. To a man who is, for us, when we looked at somebody like a Andrew Tate, we said, you know what? There's a certain amount of what we need in our generation that is just simply moxie. A man to stand up and say, not on my watch. Hell to the no. This is not going to happen on my watch. Somebody
Right.
that's a real man that has some bravado, and it doesn't matter whether they're a Christian or a non-Christian, people will follow that kind of leadership. But this is a man who is a Christian and whom which we look at and we say his faith is the guiding principle in his life. And beyond that, come on now, beyond, where's the gospel choir? Beyond that, he is a black man who will stand in the face of the African-American community and say, do you want, here, I'm going to run the tape back. I'm going to run the tape back. Do you want these kind of neighborhoods? Do you enjoy living in this kind of squalor and poverty? The answer to that should be no for African Americans. But if you follow the policies that you have continued to follow for decades after decades, this is what you get. This is what you get after that political rally is over and that candidate is in the White House and has forgotten all about you. This is what you get. Man,
they don't care. Once they're in the White House, because they lack character, they lack integrity, they lack a sense of commitment to their constituents. It's all about the party. And this is what Tim Scott is going to have to battle. Because I will say this, one of the things that Donald Trump did was he did try to keep it about his constituents. Yes. Even though it was tough. And that's the same message he's given, by the way, in one of his recent rallies. I mean, he told them, I will be your justice. I will be your voice. I will be your retribution. I'm going to fire everybody. We're going to clean this thing up. I mean, he has given this idea that I've always been for you and I will be for you. To his credit, he's kept that message clear. And I think his policies have done. The problem is I don't trust the man as far as I can throw him. And I think he's got a real sense of, I think he does not, I'm trying to be polite here. He doesn't have the right moral fortitude I'm looking for in a leader. And I don't trust exactly what he says. When I look at Tim Scott and over the last few years, I've seen a consistent message from him as well, rooted in his, not only his faith, but his commitment to his family and his community. And that's a big deal in our ministry because we believe, we hold to the mission of the church is to joyfully advance the kingdom of God by making much of Jesus until the church, community, and home joyfully abide in Jesus. Church, community, and home are the three spheres of life. And I'm watching Tim Scott live faithfully in all three spheres. And I want to see more of that. And I really hope they make much of that inside of his campaign.
I will defend the Judeo-Christian foundation.
Okay. Okay.
We don't really have to say much about that.
Let's just put it out there from the very get-go of his announcement. This is another thing I like about him. And we're not hiding it. We're not doing a bait and switch. Strong conservative family values, i.e. Christian values. No. Judeo-Christian foundation. I mean,
he said a lot in a few words.
Because I think probably some of his campaign were like, man, should we say Judeo-Christian foundation? Because, I mean, you want to talk about narrowing your base a little bit. And he's like, evidently he won the day and said, yeah, we're putting that down there.
Oh, yeah. There was somebody in the room that was like, well, maybe we go a little bit more broad. Maybe we're like the Christian music industry. And we just try to hit as many people as we can and not offend people, and because that'll affect our bottom line. No, let's be clear.
Now, Erskine, let me say this, right? We talked about this in our texting a little bit. I think now he's going to put the church at a crossroads. So we talked about those divides that we have inside the conservative party, the constitutional conservative types, the evangelicals overall, and then you have like actually the true church. And then I think there's probably one or two more splits in there, and how he's going to have to appeal to all of them. And I think he can, because I think even the constitutional conservatives, even though they don't care for the church, they do appreciate the value system. I mean, I think about, like, again, Douglas Murray, who is on the classical liberal side and lives a homosexual lifestyle, still finds himself comfortable inside of the Christian community because he appreciates the values. All that being said, he's going to put the church at a crossroads, because you have a man who appears to be walking the walk, talking the talk, right? And he's putting it all out there. I'm defending the Judeo-Christian foundation. So the church has got somebody they can latch onto and say, okay, here's a guy who is a genuine believer, a leader who's running for president. And he knows what he's doing. He's been a senator in South Carolina for a while. He's been a part of the political scene. So it's not like he's an amateur at this. Here's a guy I think we can sink our teeth in. And then you're going to have Donald Trump over here, right? And Donald Trump appeals to people. And I think he appeals to the wrong thing. And you're going to have the church now saying, hey, here God is giving us maybe a legitimate guy we could look up to, a good leader who can maybe take us to good places, and restore our land a bit, or we're going to follow essentially the flesh. I think that crossroads is coming.
Give me more.
Our nation is built on, and protect our religious liberty. I will stand up to communist China and restore opportunities for hardworking Americans to thrive and prosper. I will fight to give every parent a choice in education. So
I like that.
There's people who are like, man, you guys are ideologues. That's all fine, but show me the money.
Sure.
I'm glad he addressed that.
their children have a better chance in life. I will defend our borders and our neighborhood streets, and I will protect our most fundamental right, the right to life itself.
Pro-life.
What are we missing here?
He's checking.
What are we missing?
He's checking all my boxes.
I bear witness that America can do for anyone what she has done for me, but we must rise up to the challenges of our time. This is a fight we must win, and that will take faith. Faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in America. God bless our United States of America, and God bless you.
Faith in America. I mean, he is going hard and heavy. I'm just so curious to see what the church does here, the American church. You have an opportunity. You have an opportunity. I mean, let me just think about this for a second. If you're looking for an opportunity to make history, Tim Scott can be the first African-American man elected as president under a conservative party. Okay. If you want to make that, he's got credentials. He seems genuine. He's got a committed church he's to. Like, he serves in that church.
I was reading some stuff about he's not just an attender to the church, but like he serves at that church.
Yeah, he serves in the church. So, I mean, if from the church's lens, it's like God has given us here's a good dude. Here's a man after my own heart, maybe, right? And he talks nice, and he's got a family, and I'm hoping, and I mean, we're early, and I'm hoping there's no skeletons that come out of the closet, right? But if there's not, and he shows up to be above reproach, like we ask for our leaders, I mean, what would stop the church from embracing this guy versus President Trump, who's got a lot of skeletons in the closet and is kind of dealing with those skeletons in the closet in the court right now, right? Like, so I'm just really curious to see what the church does with this.
Now, let me go on record to say, I don't think Donald Trump is a good candidate. I did not think he was a good candidate before, and that's why I didn't vote for him. There were some problematic issues that as a believer, I was rather conflicted on. I can understand there's some people who say, hey, he's got a proven track record. He did some great things for America. if you think that, which I don't think that, but if you think that, you think, okay, Donald Trump's my guy. But if somebody better comes along, wouldn't you at that point say, no, there's somebody that's actually better? And so I'll be shifting my allegiance to somebody that's better than the guy that I thought was good. Now, I didn't think he was good, but many people obviously thought he was good. If you do think that he is good, what's the challenge, like Jason is talking about? What's the thing stopping you from saying, here's somebody that's even better?
That's right. And the thing is that I think what happens is Donald Trump, he was elected because he became that middle-class conservative voice, right? And then you have the evangelical. Remember, we have that over in the conservative side. We have that evangelical group. Not all those people are believers. They're just evangelicals. So, I mean, I'm in the church. Not everybody who professes to be a believer is a believer. Okay. He appeals to the flesh, Trump does. That gritty kind of blue collar, like, don't you tell me what to do. I'm gonna blah, 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 right? I'm gonna come hard and heavy. Like when he told, okay, there are two instances where Trump, I think, won his election. One is when he's in his debate, he told he's gonna tell China to go do it, right? And he got like this massive applause. The second thing is when he called out the RNC base and pretty much said, all these people are funded by the RNC and the big companies. I don't need their money. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to be your voice. All of a sudden, he won over this massive crowd, this massive vote, right? And a lot of those people have to be identifying Christians. You have a gentleman now in Tim Scott who has got, I think, as much savvy and wisdom and sense and genuine Christian witness, and uses his words wisely and presents himself in a manner that he can walk into the church and maybe even take preach in your pulpit, potentially. That's the kind of character we're dealing with, right? And here the church is confronted with this guy. And what I'm hoping is going to happen is I'm hoping that the church, the true church, will look at him and say, I don't have to hold my nose. I heard this statement several times. I'll hold my nose as I vote for him. I don't like him, but I'll hold my nose. And I'm like, I don't get that. I don't swing that way. You have a guy, you don't have to say things like, you don't have to qualify your voting, right? How many people did you talk to that said, well, I don't like what he says. I don't like this. I wish he'd do this, but I'm going to go vote for him anyways. Now you have a guy you don't have to qualify that with. You have a guy right here. You get to say, hey, I'm flat out. Yeah, Tim Scott's my guy. And watching the church. So my early assessment prediction is what I like to see from the church is I think that small group of true believers that's out there, I'd love to see them rise up and support this guy and say, look, this is our guy. He's a man of character. I would love to see the evangelicals as a whole do it, but I have a feeling I'm not going to. I think what you're going to find is that conservative constituency meshed with that kind of overall umbrella evangelical is going to swing towards a more, how do you want to say it? A more Trump-like candidate. I'm not sure Trump is going to do as well. His ratings right now, like his likable ratings, whatever that's called, is like at 60. Unlikable. He's unlikable, 61%. It's the highest it's been. The last highest was 55%. Even among his own base, that number's climbing. Like he's becoming more unpresidential. How about that? In the last couple of weeks.
My concern is this, Jason, and I don't know if it's all just contributed to racism, like the progressives talk about racism and racism and racism. Everything is racism. There's some racism, but not everything is racism. Let me be clear about that. But from watching Larry Elder's documentary, Uncle Tom, other black conservatives that have run before, Ben Carson, and that phenomenon.
Alan Keyes.
Remember
Alan Keyes? I liked Alan Keyes a lot. I thought he was a good dude.
I've been underwhelmed with the support of other conservatives for viable black candidates. And one of the things that I can guarantee you, and I'll find a soundbite before too much longer if this continues with actual momentum for Tim Scott, there'll be a soundbite that says, look, guys, you guys have been abandoned by your own party. Time and time again. Carol Swain in the city of Nashville, as she was running, as conservative as you could possibly be, erudite as she could possibly be, viable as she could possibly be, what Nashville desperately needed, and she could not get support from her own base in Nashville. And she even talks about that on the documentary Uncle Tom, is that not only do you have Black progressives who come out against somebody that's conservative, but you even have your own base. It's like, we won't really go that hard into supporting you. And I'm not willing to sit back and just say it's simply because of racism. I just think that some of the narratives and some of the stories and some of the paradigms in our mind that have to do with Black leadership in our country are often missing. And I'll just say that like this. There's a lot of people that don't understand my level of entrepreneurship and the way that I go about doing things. So it takes them a little bit to adjust to the fact that I'll be in the front and you'll be behind me, but it's okay because I'm driving the ship and I know where we're going with this. As long as you stay back there and can do your role here, like we'll all get there together. I can take you there. But if people are not ready for that kind of language, I'm not going to call it racism. I'm just like, there's a mentality and a shift that needs to take place in people's minds to say across the board, the best leader, irrespective of who they are, is the one who can get us to where it is that we all need to be. And I'm not sure that America is there. Historically, I haven't seen that be the case.
Do you think that's true in both communities, white, Black, or even all Asian? Or is that something you're seeing in the Black community itself? Because you're saying in Nashville, she didn't get support from her own community or from just conservatives in general, or
conservatives.
In general. Okay.
And it's mysterious. I'm not going to say it's racism. It may be to some extent that, but I think it's something more, something different than racism.
Do you think it's a trust issue? Like, okay, for instance, like I can see like a Black person not trusting a white politician, right? I know we think alike and we have the same value system and all this, but I just don't trust you. Do you think it's vice versa too? Do you think it's like, hey, I know she believes all these things. That's all good and great, but I think that she's gonna wind up supporting her quote unquote own agenda or own community or something like that. Do you think that's part of it?
Well, yeah, I do think that the trust issue is one. And people will say, well, the lack of trust in somebody that's ethnically different than you is by definition racism. But I don't want to ascribe it to simply that. I think it's a lack of the understanding of the narrative. It's a lack of understanding. And I wish I could nuance this a little bit better, but as I've seen this phenomenon, I've identified it as a lack of familiarity. The reason why we have such a great relationship is because you're extremely familiar with the stories and the narratives that have made me who I am. And the places where you have given me grace are because you know the stories and the narrative that have made me who I am. And so you go sometimes, I'm not sure I would do that way, but that's Erskin. And then we're able to flow like that.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of familiarity with one another to be able to move into nuanced things. And I just think that in a political campaign, in life, in leadership in general, there's a lot of nuances there. And it's not a matter of not trusting somebody. It's just, I'm not sure what they're going to do. I wouldn't do it that way. I don't understand this. And so we kind of shut down at that level of, I'm going to shut down because I'm unfamiliar with this pattern of leadership. I'm unfamiliar with this language and this vocabulary. And so we won't really know what to do. We get locked up at that point. And I'm not willing to call that racism. I'm just saying we need to be more familiar with one another, the stories and narratives of our lives and how they are intertwined together here in America.
Okay, so two things come to mind. One, it goes back to what we've always said in the past. Like, look, some of the easiest solutions to some of our problems is if we would just do more life together, more community together, so that, it's the idea of borrowing a cup of sugar from your neighbor, making cookies for your neighbor, that kind of thing, and doing life with your neighbors. So if we would live more in community together, we would understand those nuances you're talking about. and develop a pattern of grace and understanding, and a pattern of understanding the vocabulary and the language that's coming out in the leadership style. So that to me harkens back to, we're just so disconnected that's going to be difficult. Then the next question that comes to mind is, how does Tim Scott conquer that very thing? Because he's got an uphill battle then to climb if he's going to establish trust. And I'm going to say this like out loud: if he's going to establish trust in white evangelicalism. I mean, honestly, Erskin, if you and I don't know if you're willing to go out on this, but okay, I'm going to ask you this. You don't have to answer it. I'm going to ask you this. I mean, do you trust white evangelicalism? As a black artist, as a black Christian, as a black whatever. I mean, I know I know you got to be careful, because I mean, you go around to the churches and you sing and you do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm like, I don't want to put you in a spot, but I'm thinking,
you're not putting me in a spot. I'm eager and ready to answer this question.
Okay.
I'll answer the question this way. I think there's a lot of puppets, and I think there's a lot of titles that are void and empty seats, empty suits, empty organizations that are out there. Let me be clear about that. I think that there's a big presence for evangelicalism. There's big numbers for evangelicalism. There's analytics that are out there. And then when you actually get down to where the people that are actually serving, where the people that are actually in the seats, you look around and it's like, there's empty. It's void. It's speak. It's posture. It's tradition. And those are not people that I follow anyway, because I look through them and I look at them and I think, obviously, but they're, for the grace of God, there go I. But there's nothing there that is of a character that it is that I want to follow. I am not persuaded to be led by them. So the analytics of the situation, I do not trust from time to time. But I will tell you what I trust all day long, and it's the manalytics. Who is the actual person? Who is the actual character? The reason why I don't let people do a lot of booking for me is because I'll look a person in their eyes and I figure out what their heart and what their life is like, and if I can work with this person. And if this is the type of person who, if I make a mistake, they will be willing to cover for me. If they make a mistake, I'll be willing to cover for them. Those are the kind of ride or die people that I work with. So if you're a genuine person that's out there and you genuinely want to see people get saved, you genuinely want to see the gospel go forward, then there's a strong possibility that we will work together. If you're fake, and let me be clear about this, Jason, so I'm glad you asked me the question. If you're fake, if you're just wanting to use the nomenclature or the platform of Erskin for the advancement of your name or your kingdom or your empty pursuits, I don't like you. And I hope that you get saved, or I hope that the Lord works in your heart. I don't necessarily want to work with you.
Well,
was that ambiguous?
That was not ambiguous. Well, it's a great statement, because I'm thinking about some of these hurdles, and then if we're going to live together, if we're going to do community together, then we got to have that kind of transparency with each other. And I think that's probably what's frustrated you and I on not just the political end, as you're watching the church navigate politics in the United States, but on the ministry end. You know, it's dealing with this kind of facadeness or this wacky fakeness, or are you seeing this inside of the church, or this kind of personal advancement of your own kingdom versus God's kingdom? And it's gotten us into so much trouble. And it's so interesting you say this, because Sunday,
I do apologize. I'm probably about 2 minutes, because I've got to be on stage. I'm in a conference and I've got to be on stage in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And I don't want to make people wait.
Yeah. Well,
so give us about 2 more minutes, my friend.
I'll close it. I'll close my section down here. I'm looking at Judges 9 on Sunday and talking about Abimelech and how in the world he was able to get into power to do the things he did, slaughter 70 of his brothers, and then just go on this kind of rage. And if you look back at chapter 8, you realize that the people whored after the idolatry of the land. And essentially what happened was God's people became paganized. And when the people become paganized, you put in paganized leaders. That's just how it works. The church is no different than the culture in that way, right? When you have a half-hearted love for Christ, you're going to get wacky, reckless, wicked leadership. And so my concern for the church for this is that we would have a single-minded, heart-united, loyal love to Christ that will elect leaders who have a single-minded, heart-united, loyal to Jesus. And if the church will show itself by who it helps put into office, or at least fights for to get into office. Even if Tim Scott doesn't win, I would love to see that the church was behind him and endorsing him as a leader that God would anoint and that would help us restore our country and our hope in Christ. If that doesn't happen, then I feel like we're in a half-hearted devotion leads to reckless and wicked leadership. And if you act like Abimelech, you're going to be led by Abimelech, and no one wants to go there.
Friends, that's why there's no other show like The Way Forward.
Government officials